Welcome to the Living Spiritfully podcast, the Mind Body Misfits edition. Here are your hosts for today, Paul Galloro and Claudia Micco.
We are the Mind Body Misfits. Claudia Micco, it's been a while since we've done that, and it's been a while since I feel like it's been forever. Although
feels like a long time.
Yeah. Although we talk every day. I mean, since I'm looking at your face, it's been a while.
Yes, we haven't seen each other in a while. It's been a beautiful winter here in Hawaii. Can't say anything for the East Coast, but
Well, it's been pretty mild here. We had a couple snowy days, nothing intense, but yeah, it's we've been having our winter. Speaking of not winter, Italy almost sold out. We have one room left, 2 spots. That's it. So if anybody wants to get in on that, now is your chance.
Last chance to get on Italy retreat in September, and we will be doing more retreats. So stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. I am excited for today's guest. First of all, when you told me your friend Betsy was going to be on the show and we were going to talk about the project the two of you were working on, you buried the lead. You didn't tell me that she's the award-winning filmmaker of one of my all-time favorite movies that I actually own 2 copies of on DVD. What the bleep do we know?
What the bleep do we? That's what I said. What the bleep did I know?
That is the name of the movie. Which, listeners, if you haven't watched it, stop. Put this podcast on pause, go watch it, and then come back because it is phenomenal. And I'm so excited because you have been working side by side with Betsy on this project.
Like almost 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the project, but save some for when Betsy gets here because
I will. We just came out with a book called Lessons Learned the Hard Way. And it was something that kind of came out of me wanting to learn how to write more. And this experience has been amazing because I've never written anything narrative, mostly just manuals and workshops and articles, but nothing that came about my life. And I've had a pretty crazy life. And it's too crazy for me to even think about putting on paper. But she helped navigate it. And 23 of us got together and created a book, a collective, to come out with this book. And we all drawn all the resources together. And Betsy's got a publishing company and she mentored us and got us through the hard parts of crying and screaming and stomping and not wanting to do it. And now we have a book coming out. It's out, actually.
That's amazing. I cannot wait to read it. I have been blessed to have kind of read parts of as you were writing the story and, as you were writing the story, kind of filling me in and stuff. And it was amazing to see the transformation, the feedback that you took from Betsy, and then how you put that into writing. It was amazing. And listen, I've known you for a decade now. Oh my gosh. And I knew parts of the story, but reading reading it in one sitting, it was like, whoa.
It was a really great way to get a lot of years in 30,000 words. Yeah,
that's amazing. Betsy is here. She's going to be coming on in a second, but let me tell you a little bit about Betsy. She is, as I mentioned, an award-winning filmmaker known for her film, What the Bleep Do We Know? Again, listeners, I cannot stress it enough. Watch this film if you can find it. If not, I've got 2 copies on DVD. Come over. We'll have some popcorn. We'll watch it. We'll watch the expanded version. It is amazing. It'll change the way you live your life. Betsy is also the best-selling author of multiple books, including Tipping Sacred Cows, Killing Buddha, and, as Claudia mentioned, out now, Lessons Learned the Hard Way. Check out the show's notes to learn more about Betsy because she is an incredible woman and she's here with us today. Please welcome to the show, Betsy Chasse.
Yay!
Welcome.
Yay! Yes, hands.
Yes. Betsy, it is so exciting to be here with you today. Claudia has been telling me all about you and her journey in writing this book that is out now. That you, along with a number of other authors, are all part of. Lessons Learned the Hard Way. This is so exciting to have you here. So what I want to know, because this, I mean, first of all, the title, Lessons Learned the Hard Way. You have a number of writers that just poured their hearts out about the
Lessons
title.
Learned the Hard Way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with this idea? Tell us about that.
So I love doing compilation books for a couple of reasons. One, because A, I don't have to write the whole book myself, which is a lot. And two, because everybody has such great wisdom and great stories to share. And a lot of people are like, I don't have anything to say, or I can't write, or whatever that, storyline is in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love working with them because they end up being great writers. Like Claudia, she came through and she started and with this journey, and I got in there, was like, hey, let's fix this, let's do this. So I love working with people creatively and inspiring them to find their own creative juju. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, everything that I ever do comes from my own curiosity or my own life experience. And last year, I mean, listen, I learn it like every week. I probably learned a lesson the hard way today. But last year, I had such an intense year. I had a really bad injury. And ended up literally on my ass. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can cuss, but
yeah, you can.
For like 4 months. And it's funny, Claudia, I just, because I'm going to post my introduction onto Medium, and I was just reading it again today, I don't know, after my birthday. And it was like, I almost bawled my eyes out, and I wrote that stuff, right? And I was just like, God, because I do an introduction about how, life is this journey. So where the book came from was, I was in the midst of learning a lesson the hard way. And so for me, when I'm, processing something or working on something, I just write about it, or I make a documentary about it, or, whatever. So that's always how these things come about. And then I knew, because I had so many friends, I don't know what it was. I'm like, I'll talk forever, so I will give you a break, I promise.
Please do.
But I don't know what it was about 2023 in general. I mean, like, look, we've gone through like hell and back again as a civilization, like, right? In the last 5 years, it's been rough, right?
Yeah.
But I think people had, myself included, sort of had this like high hopes about 2023. Right. I think we all really thought like so much, and then so many people that I know were just really the lessons that they needed to learn were just coming out and coming to the front. It was like, all right, here we go. So so many of my friends kept telling me that, and I was like, okay, there's got to be great stories. And so I just picking up the phone, like calling my friends, and next thing you know, there's I think 23 stories in the book.
That is incredible. And Betsy, if you don't mind, I'm an astrologer, so I'm always like listening to stories. Pisces has undergone a huge kind of thing with Saturn going through Pisces right now. So,
is it over? Like, is the good news coming? Can I,
Because your birthday was in the early part, yes. You're kind of coming out of that in the next little bit. The middle part of the sign is getting into that. So, but I mean, I got to talk to Crystal about this, our resident astrologer on the Living Spiritfully podcast, because she's going to love the whole lessons, Saturn, Pisces. It's wonderful. But what I love about your story here, about sharing this, is that you felt something, you were going through something, and you're like, there's other people with me. Let's come together and work through this together.
Yeah. And it was fun because we all were kind of a team, and we talked to each other and shared stories about what it was like to write. And again, I think, especially for people that don't consider themselves writers, like I tell every person that I know, even if you're never going to publish it, write your memoir. And it's different than journaling, because a lot of people will say, oh, I journal. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Love the journaling. But that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about sit down and write your story. As Claudia can tell you, I mean, she wrote a piece of her life. And what was that like, Claudia, to when I said to you, okay, write your story?
Well, there were a couple of times like, I don't know if I should put that out there. I have had to change the names, you know.
To protect the
okay.
innocent.
But anybody who was there knows, you know. But there were certain things I didn't really want to throw out there. And now reading back, I'm like, oh, I probably could have even said more. But I think every time you write something, you get a little more confidence to put a little bit more of yourself out on the table. Or as my friend Roger says, he says, putting your dick on the chopping block, so to speak. So you put your dick out there. I don't have a dick. I know, I can imagine. And you decide how much you're willing to chop. So every time, so now looking back, I'm like, oh, you know, I could have even gone a little deeper into that story. But for my first time writing
great
an essay that's about me and not about a yoga pose or, you know, how to do this or how to do that, it was a lot. Like there were times when I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But
yeah, I had to, you know, part of the pulling thing out, you know, part of the process is with all the writers is saying, you know, you can read. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how many people, I think people know maybe even easier with movies, like how much things go into, you know, making a movie. They think, oh my gosh, so much goes into that. But even with writing, just, you know, Claudia and the other authors would send me a draft of their chapter, and then you could just read and go, wow, there's a big chunk missing between this sentence and this sentence.
Right.
What happened? So I'd have to call. I'd say, Claudia, like, I think something's missing here. What happened? You know, and for her to go, I don't know if I should say that. I'm like, you know what? Say it. Like, say it. The thing that I say to people is write it out, because you can always take it out before we publish it, but you got to put it on the page. You know, I always say, you know, bleed onto the page. There's a saying, I don't know who said this, if any writer actually said this. I think they say Mark Twain said it, but I don't think that's right. And he's always says, write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah. It probably is. That's a good
so
word.
That's the thing. It's like, sob it out on the page. And then if you want to reel it back in, you can. And that was kind of what everybody, Claudia and everybody, had to go through.
Yeah, it was liberating in a way.
Yeah.
And it's just a small piece of something that changed my life at a pretty young age. So then you realize, oh wow, there's a lot of drunk stories in there.
Well, you know, that's part of life. And I think everybody has it in this book. There's so many different, there's men, there's women, there's, you know, older, younger, different ethnicities, gender. I mean, it's all over the map. But the thing that I think people will get when they read the book is that, you know, everybody goes through some shit, like for real. And at the end, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to take from it? You know, what's the process? What are you going to suffer in it? You're going to use it. What are you going to do with it? And that's sort of a big part of the lesson, is like asking yourself, well, what do I do with what I just experienced? What did I learn? What do I take from it? And that's sort of watching 23 people share their different lessons learned the hard way, and then how they got to that place of being able to take something from it and not hate it as much, and not be resentful of that experience, whatever that experience was. And you know, because so many of the things that happen to us in life can make us bitter and angry and resentful, and then we just carry it with us forever. You know, just walking around with this shit like in a bag. And the beauty of the stories is watching people process it. And what was happening as we were writing was a lot of them were actually doing that in real time. You know, they were finally processing what they were writing for the first time. And that was a cathartic experience for the writers, And that's why I would tell everybody, write your memoir.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. I'm going to start writing it as soon as we're done here.
Good.
But
get drunk first.
what was
Right,
that?
get drunk.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's going to start. But what was that like, you guiding these 23 people? Because I'm sure, I'm imagining for myself, as I would be writing that and processing and reliving that and, feeling that trauma again or going through that trauma again, what was that like for you to kind of guide these people? And also, what was your relationship with them? Like, I know you've known Claudia for years. Was it some people that you knew, or was anybody new to you that?
Yeah, some people I knew, some people I didn't know at all. And so, I have taught writing and filmmaking,
Okay.
as on the college level. So, I don't approach helping people work on their writing from the perspective that I'm some guru. I'm relatively good at holding space when somebody's in process, but I'm not gonna tell them what to do, how to do it. That my job is to create the environment and ask the right questions that help them write it out. And, like I was working with a writer today, and one of the biggest fears that people have when they're talking about writing their memoirs is, oh my God, I don't want to feel that again. And, the reason I say write your memoir, even if you're never going to publish it, or anytime you get a chance to write about something in your life or write about something, do it, is because even if you think you've processed it, right? Everybody tells me this, Claudia, maybe you can speak to this, but the minute you start writing about it, really being present, because you have to share, like, how were you feeling? You have to paint a picture. You have to build the world for the reader, right? So you're in a way stepping back into that world and reimagining it and living in it. And what you're really doing is, even if you think you've healed it, so now you have a new perspective and you can look at the event from this like higher perspective or more awareness about the context of what was going on, you still hold all of the feelings around that in your body on a cellular level. So when you write it again and you really process it, you're not reliving it in that same space that you lived it the first time. You're really actually truly letting it go, not only intellectually and emotionally, but you're moving it out of your body.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I would get stuck and I'd go to the gym and come back and stay up late. It's 1 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, these were hard chapters for people to write because they were very personal stories. A lot of the books that I do, Claudia and I are working on a book together called 50 and Fabulous, which is all about like how to, continue to live and thrive and be all the wonderful things in your 50s. And, some of the people that are going to be in that book are going to be practitioners and people that have tips and health tips. But even when I do those kind of books, I really want the people, the guru on the stage notion about how someone's going to stand up there and teach you is like thankfully dying or dead, right? Yeah. People want authenticity and they want connection. And so, I try in every book that I do, whether it's this nonfiction, more, how to versus, personal stories, to have people really share personally. But this book was intense in that these were very deep personal stories and traumas and events that that happened to people. And so it was probably a little harder than some of my other books. And I'm so glad that everybody jumped in and went for it. Like they just went for it, and I was so pleased to see that nobody held back.
Yeah. And trying to make it funny, I say funny, but funny or quirky or interesting with each person's personality. I think that's what I really enjoyed about it most, is we all had our own little, I'm a little more sarcastic, self-effacing. Someone else might not be, but it all blended. The way that she put the chapters together, everybody's story kind of blended from one to the other in a really nice way. And that's what we'd like to do with 50 and Fabulous. what was it? The title is Generation
Navigating. We should know this by heart.
Oh,
right?
we should, but here we go. We're neurodivergent, Paul and I, so navigating wrinkles, spasms, and generational chasms.
There you go.
Which is just a great title.
Yeah, it is a great title. And that book is, again, we want to have people that have practical tips and information, but we're also interweaving it with everyday women's stories. Like, I don't know yet if I'm going to write about learning how to process hot flashes while working out, because I'm in the middle of my row class. All of a sudden I got a hot flash the other day, and I'm like, okay, it's already hot enough in here, people. We don't need this. So
if anybody's going to make it hilarious, it's going to be you.
Yeah, it needs to be funny, because I realize my introduction in lessons is a little intense, but I generally am funny. I'm a little bit like Claudia, in that we both kind of have a little self-deprecating sarcasm and humor. But writing, the other thing that I think that people get more insecure about, not that you asked me that, but I feel like I want to share it, because I hope people listening will just start writing, is people always think, oh, I'm not very good at putting words together, and I'm not very good and the funny thing is, that's not true. People are actually really good, and so many people that came into this book had never written before, and I was like, oh my God, we're taking them off the deep end with this intense chapter, right? It's like, all right, let's go. And I would say to them, like, okay, the first thing I want you to do before you sit down and write is just get your phone out and tell the story. Record yourself telling the story. And it was amazing, because they did that. And then I'm like, okay, now transcribe that, or speak, dictate. And they were like, oh my gosh, I've almost written it.
Yeah.
You've got to clean up the grammar, edit it a little bit. But people, you'd be surprised at how, and if you don't know a word, like for me, I don't know all these words. I see a word, I'm like, okay, I use this word 3 times in the same sentence, and I just go to the thesaurus. I'm like, okay, what other words can I use? Done. I mean, that's just like technique at this point,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I love that little tip that you gave there about recording it, just your voice, like you're telling the story, and then transcribe that. What other tips do you have for people to get started to like write their memoir?
I would say start. I mean, if somebody, there's two, let me think about how to say this. One, if you're not concerned about it ever getting published or publishing it, just start writing. Sit down and write a story. If you're gonna, if you're really serious about writing a book, I happen to have the introductory masterclass writing course, which I can give you a link for. And then I talk about how to start structuring. But the important thing is that for most people, they don't know how to organize it and structure it. And so there's tons of ways to do that. You can look up, different types of memoirs. Is your memoir like, some people want to write about, a specific part of their life. Some people want to write about their whole life. Some people have some traumatic story they want to share. So really getting clear on why am I writing my memoir, and what do I want to say, right? If you get really clear about that, and then just start focusing your writing towards that, because a lot of people just start all over the map, right? And when we have clarity about what we're writing and why we're writing it, then it makes it easier to organize our thoughts and what we want to be talking about. When we pick a subject, I want to write my memoir because I want to talk about how the childhood trauma that I experienced impacted my adult life and years out. So that's a specific, there's an angle to it, as opposed to just, I was born one day, like that just meandering on, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I ask this question because in my program, Arise, it's a morning program where we do a lot of journaling, but to get people to start to think in that direction of, because there's a lot of people, and Claudia, we've got a woman in there, 81 years old. She is a wealth of knowledge, has lived so much, and I would love for her to write a book. So if I
wish she would be in our book.
You should ask her. You should invite her.
I haven't heard back from her.
Oh, all right, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
Talk to her.
Yeah, I think anybody who wants to and if I know we're doing this podcast, you can keep this in or edit this out because you're going to edit it, but I'm happy to do like a class with everybody, to give you with your people. We could set up like I just did this with somebody else. Like I did a whole course with her, and we're doing a mastermind group, and I'm working with 20 women and 2 men, so 22 people, and I'm helping them write their entire book through a year.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's super fun. And it's like just watching these people who most of them started the course. We started in January, not really ever written anything, maybe they've written nonfiction, right? Maybe they've written about their, a how-to book, right?
Right.
But, and the look on their faces in January when we started to talk about how we were going to do this versus where they are already, and we're in our March, they're just having a blast. And I just love the wheels turning and the lights exploding in people's heads when they finally just do some of the simple things that you need to do to organize how you want to write, because that's where people freak out. That's why they can't write, because they sit down and they go, I don't know what to do or where to start or how to start or what to say. And once you understand how to do that, people just take off.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure, like, I know for me, what freaks me out about writing, and I went to journalism school, it's always, I've got the end product in my mind before I even start, that I'm just like, it's not going to look like that. And so I love that.
Right.
Just get it out, just start writing, speak it out, and it'll start to shape itself.
Yeah. And have fun. Jeez Louise.
Right.
I mean, it's so funny because I earn a living writing and teaching writing, and I have to constantly remind myself to have fun again. Because, I'll sit down and go, okay, I've committed to writing this blog on Substack, and I've kind of been bad over the last couple of weeks because I just haven't felt like writing. And I said to myself, okay, don't feel bad. You've been doing a lot of this work with these other authors, and you've been helping all this stuff. When something comes, it'll come. And that's sort of like what I realized. I was like, I have to give myself permission that it's okay not to write, that it's okay to go, I don't feel like writing today. It's not coming. Because when you can get into the flow, when you're in it, and when you aren't in it, and then you just don't push yourself.
Right. I honestly cannot wait to read this book, because again, just reading Claudia's chapter, I'm like, I can't wait to read everybody else's. But let me ask you this question, and I'm going to put it to the two of you because you both were involved in this project. What lessons have you learned, whether it was through the process or reading other people's stories?
You want to go first?
Yeah, you can go first, or I can go. You go first.
I learned a lot. How much time do you have?
Not much.
Question.
Keep it succinct.
That's a big question.
One of the things that Betsy just said, though, was not being so obsessive about doing it all the time when I'm not feeling like it. This was really good, not just for the writing of this, but for the writing of other stuff that I have to do. I push myself, and then it doesn't come out, and then I throw it all away. I have more, sheets of paper on the floor and notebooks around the house that don't have any, anything usable in it. And what I did during this process was a couple of times too, especially towards when I really had to get that final draft done. Like I would just go, forget it. I gotta wait. I gotta throw this to the side and allow myself some time. And then when I did that and I put it out of my mind, as soon as I had a little glimpse, a feeling, it's hard to explain, but just a little, little tingle, then I was able to sit for a really long period of time and think about it and write it and then rewrite it and feel like I was in the flow. But when I was trying really hard to do it, and trying is lying. So I was really I wasn't being honest with myself about what I really could accomplish. So that was the main thing. The main thing was really letting go and letting the process happen rather than forcing the process. Can't force it.
Yeah. And how true is that for life too?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, I think what the biggest lesson that I learned from everybody in the book is that, life is a journey. And, I used to tell my kids all the time, because they, we'd go to Disneyland and they would say, I wish we lived at Disneyland. And I would always say, but if you lived at Disneyland in about a week, you'd find reasons to hate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can't live here.
Right.
And so, what I've learned through this process, I mean, for me, I think that was something I was learning this whole last year, was just to ride the wave, see what's going on, what lessons what's the takeaway that you get from this experience that you can carry forward so that the next time the shit hits the fan and there's a new lesson to learn the hard way, maybe it won't be so hard because you'll have taken some of the wisdom from the last time.
Yes. Oh, that's a valuable life lesson right there as well. Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm excited for your future project, 50 and Fabulous. But Betsy, if you're okay with it, can we just circle back to your project from 20 years ago? I'm sorry if we can.
Of course, no, we can.
But what a brilliant piece of work that is.
We love it.
Can you tell me a little bit, how did you even come up with that? What brought you to investigate that, to sit down with all of those amazing authors and just everyone that you had in that, and then to get Marlee Matlin, if I'm saying her name correctly.
Yeah, you are.
She's amazing.
So
too.
it's funny because there's 3 filmmakers on that movie: me, Mark Vicente, and William Arndt. And Will and Mark were up in Washington for I guess about a year, putzing around trying to make this movie called Sacred Science. And at one point, finally, I think Mark was like, look, we got to bring in an actual producer and somebody who really makes movies and help us get this going. So I meet Will, I get brought onto the project. I'm just this rough, I don't even think I knew how to spell quantum physics, to be really honest with you. I'd never any of it. But it was really funny because Mark brought me a script of this thing called Sacred Science. And I read the script and it was horrible. It was awful. But there was this one piece. So one of the things that they were planning on doing was using these videos that they had access to of these speakers speaking. So they were going to reuse those videos. And so in one of those videos was a woman named Candace Pert, who's no longer with them.
I know. Yeah.
She wrote the book Molecules of Emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And in the script, now, mind you, I'm not really interested. All I cared about was what kind of car was I driving and where were my shoes at that point. That was it. And so she says in this clip, she says, have you ever wondered why you keep recreating the same situations in your life? It's because you're addicted to the chemicals in your body. And I don't know what happened. A whole boing went off in my head. And I was like, that makes sense to me. All this woo-woo shit about meditate and put the crystal here and none of that actually really made sense to me. But when she talked about how your brain works, I was like, that I can grok. That now I understand. So I talked to Will and I said to Will, because when I make a movie, I'm responsible for other people's money. It's not my money. It was Will's money, right? What was the financier? So I like to get real clear on what everybody's expectations are, because if I'm going to spend somebody else's money, I want to make sure that they're not going to be pissed at me if it doesn't come out the way they want it to.
Right.
Because movies it's tough to invest in movies. It's highly unlikely that you're ever going to get your money back. I mean, there's it's more of a loss than a win. So I asked him, I said, well, what do you want to have happen with this movie? And he said, I want 100 million people to see this movie. And I said, well, no. 100 million people are not going to see this movie because this movie makes no sense. It's dumb. And at the time they had a host they had these weird Saturday Night Live sketches, and then they were going to intercut it with these videos. And then Will, being Will, was like, well, what would you do? And I was like, I would tell a story, because again, going back to the books and everything that I do, people learn through stories, and people have to relate to something. And if there's just these like, and the first thing I said was, you can't use this old videos of these speakers, because once you blow that up on a screen, it's going to look terrible, because it won't read. I don't know how people understand that, but like it just would never show on a screen. It would look all blurry and fuzzy. So I'm like, we have to go interview these people. And so Will was like, well, okay, call them up. So I didn't know any of these people. I hadn't read any of their books, like nothing. And I started calling like big names like Deepak and all these people. And they were like, no. And I was like, okay. So we started finding all these other cool people, and they were like, this sounds cool. So first we went around and interviewed a lot of people. And still Will was really attached to having a host. And finally one day, he used to call these things the Betsy blow up. I convinced him that what we really needed to do was to tell a story and hire a famous actress to play the lead, because I knew if we were going to try to get this movie into movie theaters, the way the Hollywood works, and it sadly still works this way, is that, you know, they have a formula, and it's like they check the list of formula, right? So no one's going to like distribute into theaters a weird documentary about quantum physics and molecular biology. Like that's just bizarre, with a bunch of nobody. Like no one's going to do that. But if you create a narrative story and you put Marlene Maitland in it, and all this cool, and you have all these other actors, and it looks like a movie, feels like a movie, and smells like a movie, and Marlene's an Academy Award winning actress, we have a better chance of getting it out into the world. So finally Will agreed to that. And so Will and I, with another writer, went off and wrote the story of Amanda. And a lot of people always ask me if I'm like, you know, the girl, Amanda's roommate. And we always look very similar, although she's in her 50s, and, you know, she's on Dallas and she looks amazing. But
she was in Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. That's how I recognized her.
Yeah. So see, we had these great, you know, actresses. And so we had her, and it was wonderful. And then how the title came about was, I used to say to Will, because so Will and Mark were deep in this stuff. And so Will is a physicist, like for real. He actually worked on Star Wars and built rockets, and like for real physicist. And, you know, Mark had spent a lot of time doing all sorts of different types of spiritual work. So they were like really in this stuff. I had no idea about any of it. So I would look there and I would say, I mean, what the fuck do I know? But what does this have to do with me? That was always what I would ask. And so we had Will one day made a sign that says, what the fuck does Betsy know? And it was always like, if we would go to these interviews, and the way that we would interview the scientists is that Will would start, then Mark would come in, and then I would interview last. And I would always be like, okay, why do I care about this? Like, why does this matter to me? Like, how is this going to impact my like grocery shopping? Like, and I was very much, that's what I wanted to know. Like, is this just all mental masturbation, or like, how does it actually impact me? Like, why do I want to give a shit about the Planck scale? Like, why? And I sort of, some of these physicist guys especially would just look at me like, I thought Fred Allen was going to punch me, because I was like, I don't understand. Can you say that again? It's like, how can you not understand? And I'm like, I don't understand. Funny enough, like after the movie came out, Fred and a bunch of them came back to me, and they're like, oh my God, you made me simplify this so much that now it makes sense. And I'm like, because you can't, you know, people, if you're going to make a whole movie about how your thoughts affect your reality, because it's essentially what the bleep is, a whole movie about how your thoughts affect your reality, and the neuroscience and the bio and the, you know, whatever, quantum physics and all the stuff around that. But it had to make sense. So I think Will finally realized that because he and Mark were so heady and in it, that my just sitting there going, I don't understand what any of this shit means or why I should care all the time. So that's how the title came to be, What the Bleep. We realized it was what the fuck do we know up until like 3 weeks before we were going to release it. And then we're like, I don't think we can do that. I think we should change it to Bleep. So we did.
Yeah. I mean,
it's one of my faves.
I think it is just a brilliant film. And what I loved is that you like, as a spiritual person, I'm sure Mark and Will,
Will.
like I'm sure the three of us, he and I, the three of us could have a conversation and I would just be right in it. That's me. But I have a hard time relaying this stuff that I've known within me my entire life to like my students and people that I speak to and my clients. And that movie just made it so easy. And I love how you just took these two guys and you just grounded them and helped to tell the story in such a way that I hope 100 million people have seen it.
I hope so too. I always say I was the vagina between the two dicks, but
but you know what? That's what we need.
It was what we needed. Yeah, because they were always and they were always arguing and battling. And Mark left the movie for a while. I mean, there was a lot. Probably shouldn't say all that, but I'm kind of at this I don't have any fucks to give point in my life anymore, especially with any of that. There was a lot of drama, and we all have our skills. So like, let me, to give Will credit, like we had 90 hours of interview footage.
Yeah.
90 hours. I don't know if you've ever tried, you're editing an hour, right?
Yeah.
You edited an hour-long interview. Try editing 90 hours. Okay. So, Will was like, luckily, so Will took that 90 hours and we all highlighted the kind of our favorite parts, but then Will took it and cut it to 6 hours. Right. And so we each kind of, at the end of the movie, if you see the credits, mine, Will, and Mark's names spin. It's a triad, and then we spin. And it was sort of like this tangled hierarchy of leadership, but I do think that for me, I really did ground them in like, if you guys, and that's what they asked me to do. I mean, that's what I was hired to do, was to come in and make some sense. Like, you guys are like sitting here just, they've had like bad idea sessions for like a year and nothing was coming. So, I am, I had this weird experience with a medicine man in Africa who said that my skill and my purpose is to grab from the ethers and bring it into reality. It's like, that's your job. You find things and you coalesce them into mass and you put them into the world. And I'm like, yeah, that is pretty much what I do. So
that's literally what you
do. And everything else, like books, one day there's 23 random people and I grab them together, coach them. And what comes out is what I think is a cohesive book about lessons learned the hard way,
Yeah.
Same with the Bleep.
I love it. Do you know, are you familiar with your astrological chart, your natal chart?
Yeah, I am. What was it?
Do you know your big three? Your sun, moon, and rising?
I'm Scorpio, I believe. I'm Pisces. Oh, I want to say Gemini or Virgo.
I have no idea.
I'm just really fascinated
I've had it done
because
so many times. And what has been told is that, I have this, I'm like, what somebody described it to me like this. They're like, wow, you're a massive change maker. Like, you make big change. And you're either like Gandhi or Hitler. And I was like, oh, thanks. Okay. He's like, because I have similar charts to both of those two types of people.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, well, not going to do Hitler. Not going there. So
been done already. Been done to death, literally.
But I have that kind of chart. And that, I know that, and I don't even like, it doesn't even make me feel arrogant to say that. Like, I know I'm really blessed to have been born knowing my purpose, not always knowing how to do it, but I've always just known what I was supposed to do. And I have a big mouth, which is so use it,
Well, you know what? You have created some amazing things. I know you're going to continue creating wonderful things. I'm so excited for Lessons Learned the Hard Way. So listeners, go to the show's notes to check out how you can connect with Betsy, how you can find this book. And then you're going to be back on the show to promote 50 and Fabulous.
Yes, we will. That will come out in June.
Okay, June of 24.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're still looking for authors if anybody wants to play and have fun. It's not expensive. Like, people always go like, you have to pay to be in the book. I'll just explain to you. Yes, you pay to be in the book. Not a lot of money because that, but it does cover my time. It covers my covers, I'm really particular about the look and feel of the book. It's not a self-published book. I own my own publishing imprint. I used to be published by Simon and Schuster, and I realized, like, why am I doing it? I've learned, my biggest lesson I've learned as I've gotten older is I want to own all of my own creativity and intellectual property.
Yes.
And so I started my imprint like 9 years ago. So we've published multiple books. So you're not a self-published, you're published, but the cover, we have cover design, interior design. I'm a big stickler for like doing my best to make sure there's no typos in the book and it's copy edited and it looks pretty, because it's, all that matters. And you can really kind of tell the difference between no disrespect to like a cheesy self-published book and like a book. And
right.
Our books look really beautiful. And you get a lot of coaching. So we have a lot of fun with it. So there's time spent. But at the end of the day, what is it?
It's a writing experience. And then you get a book at the end of it, which was the big surprise,
Yeah, you actually, Claudia just ordered some books for her, so she's going to have them. It's like, it's cool. A bunch of the authors are starting to get their books delivered to them, and the looks on their faces when they hold up the book and they're like, "There's my name! Look at that!" And it's sweet.
I love it.
And the other, can I just say really quick? The other thing about writing a chapter or two in a book, especially if you're a new writer and writing in a new way. It gives you, this gives you the mentoring that you're looking for, the editing and all that stuff. But inside, it takes the pressure off you to have to write a whole book. It gives you little pieces, and you can learn that way. And we also, you get to keep your writing. So somebody else doesn't own it, and I think that's a huge piece of this that's very important for people to know.
Yeah, and you don't have to mark like we do. We help everybody learn how to market. Like, you learn how to do all these things that there's all these companies that charge, I mean, a lot of money to do what we're doing, but we don't charge barely at all, but we charge to cover the book. But I also it's fun for me. I get to meet new people and hear their stories and connect with other writers, so that, I feel like I have a community.
And you do. And it's growing.
Yeah, we had fun together.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Betsy, honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, for opening your heart and sharing yourself with us here. Listeners, again, check the show's notes, how to connect with Betsy, how to get the book, and follow Betsy on all the social channels that we have there so that you can stay informed of all the things happening.
Thank you.
Betsy,
well, I expect to hear from you about writing.
Me?
Yeah. I'm ready to read your book. You said you were going to, in the beginning of the show, you said you were going to write a book. Now I'm the accountability coach going, how's that shit going? Come on.
Okay. I love it. You're going to hear Lessons Learned the Hard Way, Volume 2. I'll be in that.
Okay, good.
I love it. Betsy, thank you so much. Claudia, you want to take us home?
Why fit in when you were born to stand out?
See you, everybody.
Aloha. Bye.
The Living Spiritfully podcast is a Spiritful production. Executive producer, Paul Galloro. Co-producers, Claudia Micco and Catherine Stilo. A big thank you and much love to you, the Living Spiritfully community, for liking, subscribing, sharing, and supporting this podcast.